Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I'm so glad that you are here today. We are going to be talking about my anticipated reads for the months of May and June. For the last year or so, 2 years, I guess, I've been thinking about books that are coming out and making these anticipated reads videos quarterly. But because there were so many books coming out in April, I made a separate video for April. So today we're just going to talk about 10 books that I'm excited for that are coming out in May and June. And I hope that you find a couple from this list that you might be excited for as well. We have a lot of historical on here and only one middle grade and a romance and some contemporary. So let's just dive right in. The first book comes out on May 2nd, and it's called The Secret Book of Flora Lee by Patty Callahan Henry. In this one, we follow two sisters, Hazel, and I didn't write down the other one's name. They are sent to the English countryside during World War II, and Hazel's the older sister, and in order to kind of help her sister, she creates this fairy tale world and continues to tell her stories that are set in this fairy tale world that she's created. But at one point, something happens that her sister disappears and is never really found. And so years later, Hazel is now working in a bookstore, and this book arrives one day that is her fairy tale stories that she told to her little sister. And she's like, what is going on here? Is her sister alive? Like, what happened? How does anyone else even know these stories? Because she only created them to entertain and distract her little sister. I am just very intrigued. I want to know what happens. Who wrote this book? What happened to the sister who went missing? I'm very intrigued. I love sibling stories. I love World War II. I love the stories of like children being sent to the countryside, but I like this take on it. So I'm very excited for this book by Patty Callahan Henry. And I've read a couple others by her that I've enjoyed as well. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Next up, we have the only middle grade that's on this list, and it's by Katherine Applegate, and it's the third in a series, and it's the one and only Ruby. Ah, I'm so excited. Ruby is the young elephant that is sent to the mall in the one and only Ivan. So Ruby shows up in the first book. She's also in the second book. And this time she's going to get her story told. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I've loved Ivan. I loved the one and only Bob. And now we're going to have the one and only Ruby about an elephant. I love books with elephants in them. And I love Katherine Applegate. This was a win-win-win-win-win for me. Hopefully. We'll see. The next one that also comes out on May 2nd is called No Two Persons. And this is by Erica Bauermeister. And I have a couple more Erica Bauermeister books on my shelves. I have read The Scent Keeper by her and really liked it. It was very different. This one is going to follow one book and 9 readers who read this book and how this book impacts their lives differently. I just think that sounds perfect. That sounds just like what books do. Books reach each of us in different ways because of our own experience that we're bringing to it. I don't know anything really about the actual plot of the story. That's all I know. One book, 9 readers, 10 changed lives, it says. So I'm like, ooh, who's that 10th person? Where did that person come from? So I don't know if it's going to be told almost like short stories or these intertwined stories. I don't know. But I have read Erica Bauermeister before, and it sounds like a book for book lovers. So I'm in, and I've already been approved for it on NetGalley. So yay for me. The next one is by Christina Lauren, and it's called The True Love Experiment. It comes out on May 16th, and I've had some hits and some misses from Christina Lauren. She tends to be a little more spicy than I normally like, but I have enjoyed some of her books, especially some of the more recent ones. Some of the older ones, no thank you. But the story of this one is going to be based on reality TV, and it is a guilty pleasure or not so guilty. I don't feel really guilty about it, but I love reality TV. And especially the ones that are focused on relationships and love stories like Love Island and The Bachelor. Love is Blind. I love all those. And it's okay. I'm okay with that. I know they're ridiculous. This one is based on a reality TV show. In this one, we follow 2 people. Obviously, they're going to be our romance, right? But one of them is a romance novelist who's never really been in love herself. The second one is a documentary maker, film producer, filmmaker who works for this network, who the higher ups in the network task him with creating this reality TV love story drama. He is not thrilled about that, but his job is kind of on the line. It's his last straw to get a show that has some ratings. And so this novelist becomes the star of this reality TV series but the filmmaker and the novelist, they're going to somehow fall in love, right? I'm into it. I can't wait to read that. I can't wait to read that. The fifth one I have comes out on May 30th, and it's by Mike Gell, who wrote All the Lonely People, which I loved. Loved. This one is called The Museum of Ordinary People. We follow Jess. Jess, early on in the book, loses her mom. I don't know if her mom died before the book starts, but Jess has to go clean out her mom's home so that it can be sold. In the process, she meets a mysterious Alex person, and together, Alex and Jess somehow become the caretakers of this archive of mementos and letters and photographs, and it's called the Museum of Ordinary People. There's a quote in the description that says, "A celebration of the extraordinary in the ordinary. The Museum of Ordinary People is a keenly observed novel of grief, the power of memories, and the importance of connectedness." This just sounds like a Krista novel from start to finish. It sounds like something I'm going to love. These two people, probably both with their own baggage, becoming the caretakers of these seemingly unimportant little mementos, ordinary day-to-day mementos that together represent people's lives and their loves and their relationships. And I just feel like it's going to be a book of healing and grief and working through loss together, connected with other people. Oh man, I just feel like it's going to be so good. And I really loved what Mike Gale did with All the Lonely People, so I'm very hopeful for this one as well. Also on May 30th is a kind of retelling romance called Leave It to the March Sisters by Amy Serrano. And all I know about this one is that it's a contemporary retelling of Little Women told from the perspective of Amy. Amy was never my favorite. When I read Little Women, she's never my favorite in the adaptations. When Amy throws the manuscript into the fire, she just loses my love forever. I know she was just a child. I don't care. That was horrible. I'm a Jo girl through and through. Love me some Jo. But Amy maybe has always been a little misunderstood. I don't know. I'm willing to give it a shot. I've recently read The Other Bennet Sister, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from a perspective of one of the sisters, Mary, who is kind of overlooked and misunderstood in that book. So I'm very hopeful that Leave It to the March Sisters will do the same thing for me with Amy that The Other Bennet Sister did for me with Mary. Does that make sense? We'll see. We'll see. The last four that I have are all coming out in June, and they are all historical fiction. So the first one is by Kristen Harmel, and it's called The Paris Daughter. We follow these two mothers, and it's in the midst of Nazi occupation, and they have to just make really difficult decisions for their families. One of them might be fleeing to England and asks her to bring her daughter and get her out of the country. Something along those lines. I think one mother ends up taking the other mother's kid by her request, though. One of them owns a bookstore, but during the Blitz, everything changes. And I'm not sure what changes. I'm not sure. But I can imagine it's going to be hard-hitting. I can imagine I'm going to be crying. And I don't know, there's going to be that little bit of mystery involved with it as well. We'll see. Catherine Ray on June 13th is coming out with another historical fiction called A Shadow in Moscow. I don't know very much about this one. I didn't read too much into the description. All I know is it's going to follow two different female spies during Cold War Moscow. I'm like, Amanda from the Curly Reader, have you heard of this one? Because I feel like this is right up your alley. Cold War Moscow, two female spies, two timelines, alternating POVs between the two of these women. And it just says readers are going to be kept on their toes. I'm in. I have read quite a few books by Catherine Ray. Her most recent one was also historical, The London House, and it was okay. I'm not convinced historical is where her sweet spot is, but I'm willing to give her another try. This does sound very interesting. We'll see. Also on June 13th is The Spectacular by Fiona Davis. I have enjoyed Fiona Davis. I've read one so far, but I have a couple more on my shelves. She is known for taking a building in New York City and creating this story, this historical fiction story around that building. So infusing true events and true people in with her fiction. And I'm very excited. This one is going to take place about Radio City Music Hall in the 1950s. And 19-year-old Marion is kind of a well-to-do young woman living in New York City has her very predictable life planned out in front of her. She feels a bit trapped and doesn't really want that life. And so instead she auditions to become a rockette. I'm assuming she gets the position. But also during this time period in the mid 1950s, the Big Apple Bomber is this serial killer, really, or like this person who puts bombs all over New York City. It has been terrorizing the city for over a decade. And this kind of is the beginning of psychological profiling. And so somehow these storylines are going to intersect. I'm not sure if our young Marion, who becomes a rockette, if she's going to be involved in this in some way. If the Radio City Music Hall is a place that gets bombed, somehow these stories are going to intersect. But I love that it's going to deal with a serial killer / bomber in New York City, plus the Rockettes, Radio City Music Hall, all of these things intertwined in the 1950s. It should be a really good one. Should be good. And finally, we have another historical fiction, obviously. Another author that I've read from before, though, Hazel Gaynor. She has a new book coming out called The Last Lifeboat on June 13th. And this one is a World War II historical fiction, takes place in 1940. It does follow some true events. We follow a teacher named Alice who's trying to help evacuate kids out of Britain onto this boat during the war. A whole bunch of kids get on this boat along with some teachers and parents, I believe. Lily is one of the moms that's there. She's kind of at the end of her rope. She's on the boat, but a Nazi submarine torpedoes this boat and only one lifeboat of people remains. So the rest of the boat is destroyed. These two women are in the lifeboat with a handful of kids, I believe, and they become each other's best hope for survival as their lives intertwine. So I don't really know much more than that. I don't know how many kids are in the boat. I don't know if any of the kids survive. Actually, it only talks about these two women in the description. So I'm very, very curious about this event. It seems to be an event that I don't know anything about. So I'm very interested in that. And I have liked Hazel Gaynor's books in the past. So I'm very excited about that. So there you have it. 10 more books that are coming out this spring that I'm really looking forward to. I would love to hear if any of these are on your radar, if you've heard of any of them, if you have others that are coming out in May and June that you want to put on my radar that you think that I will like. Let's chat about them down in the comments. I always love talking with you down there. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me today, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.